When it comes to the most entertaining Western action movies of the last 35 years, what's the first title that comes to mind? Tombstone? Unforgiven? The Quick and the Dead? Hell no, it's Young Guns by a country mile. Indeed, Christopher Cain's highly amusing and energetic tale of Billy the Kid and his participation with the Regulators in the Lincoln County War remains such a potent pop culture benchmark that almost 4 decades later, an official sequel entitled Guns 3, Alias Billy the Kid, is currently in pre-production. Original Young Guns writer John Fusco is back on board, along with Emilio Estevez taking over the directorial saddle. As we look forward to the riotous return of the characters we love, it's time to recollect and celebrate the 35th anniversary of Young Guns by breaking down what inspired the movie, how it was developed, what went into the production, how historically accurate the story remains, and perhaps most enlightening, the treasure trove of on-set anecdotes and mischievous tomfoolery that the youthful cast thoroughly enjoyed while making the movie in the winter of 1988. So gear up, kick back, crack a brew, and stuff some chew. It's time to find out what the happened to this movie. After completing work on his first screenplay for the movie Crossroads in 1986, writer John Fusco traveled to New Mexico, where Young Guns takes place, and spent 4 to 5 months researching the area. Fusco's primary focus was to learn more about the notorious gunslinger William H. Bonney, better known as Billy the Kid. After months of research, Fusco began writing a script about Billy the Kid's role in the 1878 Lincoln County War in New Mexico. To mainline the narrative and keep the cast manageable, Fusco made composites of several real-life historical figures and reduced the number of Regulators from 11 to 6. Director Christopher Cain, who happens to be the father of actor Dean Cain, became involved with Young Guns due to his previous relationship with Fusco, doing rewrites on Cain's urban crime thriller, The Principal. Around that time, Fusco showed Cain a draft of Young Guns and agreed to direct the movie after reading just 16 pages. Cain was also the one who suggested Emilio Estevez play Billy the Kid, based on their time working together on the 1985 movie That Was Then, This Is Now. Interestingly enough, for as enthusiastic as Cain was after reading the script, Fusco's employers at the time were not so impressed, as Fusco had a first-look deal at TriStar. However, TriStar disliked his script for Young Guns and decided not to make the movie, opening the door for Fusco to seek independent financing from Morgan Creek Productions, the company that eventually produced the movie. Joe Roth and James G. Robinson, owners of Morgan Creek, oversaw the making of the entire movie. Due to the reputational hit that Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate took, westerns were severely out of fashion by the late 80s. As such, raising $6 million of the budget proved to be incredibly difficult for Cain and Roth. Thanks to efforts, Cain was able to secure a modest production budget of roughly $12 million. In order to keep production costs low, Cain hired local non-union crew members in New Mexico to construct sets and recreate the visual tableau of 1878. Many adolescents with substance abuse addictions who could not be employed anywhere else were recruited to build the sets. With a decent shooting budget locked and loaded, principal photography on Young Guns commenced on February 8th, 1988, lasting until March. Considering the movie was released less than 5 months later on August 14th, we're talking about a lightning quick editorial turnaround that helped get the movie into theaters as fast as possible. Young Guns was primarily filmed in New Mexico, with additional footage shot in Arizona. With fairly limited public production information beyond this point, now's a great time to lean into the fascinating trivial tidbits revealed by the cast in the DVD commentary. Along with Lou Diamond Phillips and Dermot Mulroney, actor Casey Samesco, who plays Charlie Baldry in the movie, spilled tons of interesting bits. For instance, the first thing the cast and crew filmed was the trailer, which was apparently not very uncommon in 1988. One of the first things that occurs in the movie is the recruitment of the Regulators by the suave and sophisticated English cattleman John Tunstall, played by Terrence Stamp. Interestingly, while Tunstall was a real person, he was much younger at the time of the Lincoln County War than he's depicted in the movie. According to reports, Tunstall was 24 at the time of his involvement, and was actually much younger than most of the Regulators. When the film was made, Stamp was 49, more than double Tunstall's actual age. Conversely, Josiah Doc Scurlock, played by Kiefer Sutherland, was 31 during the war, while Sutherland was only 21. Although Doc is portrayed as the medic among the outlaw gang, in reality, Scurlock dropped out of med school in Louisiana and cited the humid weather as the reason he relocated to the Southwest. Charlie Sheen, who plays Dick Brewer in the film, was 22, while the real-life Brewer was 27. The youngest member of the Regulators in real life was Billy the Kid, who was 20 years old during the events depicted in the movie. Emilio Estevez, meanwhile, was 25. Interestingly enough, in 2016, Phillips revealed that Sean Penn was offered the role of Billy the Kid, but had to decline due to legal trouble. Meanwhile, Patrick Swayze was offered the role of Dick Brewer, but was no longer interested in doing a Brat Pack-style ensemble at that stage in his career. As for Phillips' own role as Chavez, he met with Fusco and producers during the casting process in the belief that they wanted him to audition for the part. However, after simply explaining the character to Phillips, Cain asked, "Well?" At that point, Phillips knew he was being offered the role without an audition. One of the next big events in the film takes place in town at night, where the self-proclaimed pugilist Charlie is seen fighting one of Lawrence Murphy's men to protect Tunstall. Believe it or not, none of the fight scenes in the film were choreographed beforehand. All of the gunfights and hand-to-hand skirmishes were improvised on the spot. The actors didn't even have marks to hit during the fights. Speaking of Murphy, one of the significant differences between the movie and real events was his role as a fearsome antagonist during the Lincoln County War. In reality, Murphy contracted terminal cancer by the time the war even took place. Following Tunstall's death in the film, the Young Guns are deputized and immediately go after the arrest of Henry Hill. The background extras in the barroom scene were played by real-life Hells Angels members, including Vice President Cisco Valderrama. The same intimidating bikers were subsequently used as extra security on the set during the filming of the final battle, when the crowds of onlookers became far too big. What's truly hilarious about the Henry Hill arrest was that after the shootout took place and the Regulators rode out, Charlie Sheen's horse stormed off and the actor had no clue how to stop it. Sheen was reportedly a horrible horseback rider and constantly needed assistance to make it appear otherwise. In fact, the crew had to strap Sheen down with a rope tied to the saddle to make sure he didn't fall again. When the actors were learning how to ride horses before filming began, they played a game of tag on horseback to get familiar with the process. This sense of adolescent playtime would not only persist, but set the tone of camaraderie among the actors, which is clearly visible on screen. In fact, Estevez was extremely lonely and emotionally depressed while making the movie, so soon after a heartbreaking separation from his girlfriend. As a result, Phillips would often cheer up his co-star. In one instance, Phillips had the wardrobe and makeup departments dress up a live sheep in a corset and little garter belt to deliver it to Estevez's trailer. Phillips also revealed that it was Estevez who launched a full-fledged prank war on the first days of filming, which set off the slew of sophomoric hijinks to come. For instance, Estevez had arranged care packages to be delivered to his cast members, claiming they were from the studio. Along with a letter thanking them for doing the movie, Estevez sent his co-stars a box full of cow manure. Once the cast caught wind that Estevez was behind the charade, an endless parade of on-set practical joking ensued. Indeed, part of the tight-knit bond of the Regulators seen in the film derived from the actors enjoying their company in between takes. The cast would often play guitar on downtime and sing and dance. And when they got drunk together, the cast would often force Lou Diamond Phillips to sing La Bamba. There was also a bar in the constructed town that had a pool table the cast would play routinely, which helped them become closer. They also went skiing and played Pictionary. The actors bonded so well while making the movie that many of them had no qualms about putting their co-stars on blast in the commentary. For example, a bloody wound on Charlie Sheen's face in the opening sequence was the result of a runaway zit. Efforts were made to cover it up and make it appear as if he sustained the scar before the events of the movie. At one point, Mulroney pokes fun at Estevez for wearing lifts in his cowboy boots to make him look taller, questioning why he would do such a thing when Billy the Kid was notorious for being small in stature. Estevez's lifts can actually be seen during the nighttime festivities in Lincoln during the first act of the movie. Another amusing aside relates to the first barroom shootout. To increase the sound of the gunshots, ceramic plaster wadding was jammed into the blank bullets. However, the plaster began to spray the actors while filming, Estevez was blasted in the face, and Mulroney was tagged in the shoulder blade. This was deemed dangerous enough to halt filming to tend to Estevez and ensure he was fit to continue. Speaking of Mulroney in danger, he's chewing real tobacco in the movie as he refused to chew Tootsie Rolls as a substitute on the grounds they're bad for his teeth. The next notable moment in the movie comes when Billy goes against his crew's wishes and kills McCloskey and several of his unarmed men in cold blood. To simulate McCloskey's brains being blown out, ground beef was used as a prop. Baker, the victim who gets a knife lethally thrown at him by Chavez, was played by Cody Palance, the son of Jack, the veteran actor who plays Murphy in the movie. Following the death of McCloskey, Chavez guides the Regulators on a journey through the spirit world as they embark on a hallucinatory peyote trip. Funnily enough, a can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup was used as the peyote. While approaching the indigenous campground inside the spirit world, Doc is seen leading the gang with his face fully shrouded by a black bandana mask. Get this, that was not Kiefer Sutherland under the mask. Kiefer had actually left the set early in the morning, as he had actually left to help his wife deliver their baby. Instead, it was Sutherland's stunt double in disguise who leads the gang into the camp. Meanwhile, the reason Chavez moves so slowly on the 30-foot cliff in the spirit world is due to Philip's crippling fear of heights. Later, during Chavez's rousing speech relating to his slain Navajo family, Phillips had a feverish temperature of 104 degrees and went to the doctor the night before. Unwilling to pass on his big speech, Phillips sucked it up and completed the scene on schedule. After a brief respite, the Regulators violently confront Sheriff Brady and his men, have their badges stripped, and become outlaws. Afterward, Charlie is seen visiting a brothel in the movie. In the original extended version of the scene, Charlie learns that the prostitute he visits is actually his mother before relaying the news to the boys. Before the epic final showdown at McSween's house that's loaded with cameos, the Regulators enjoy some rest and bathe in a hot spring. The bath had to be dug by hand in the desert sand. One of the things that goes unnoticed about the movie is how freezing cold New Mexico was in the winter of '88. Great efforts were made to make the film appear hot, dusty, and sweaty, but in reality, the actors were freezing. For the outdoor bathtub scene, crew members had to pour hot water into the tub in between takes. In the same scene, Billy reads a news report about himself and laughs off the description by saying, "I ain't left-handed." This is a running gag in the movie and an in-joke of sorts relating to the real Billy the Kid. Because Billy was often photographed in tin-type pictures in the 19th century, the image was routinely flipped. This made the public believe that Billy was a lefty, when in fact he was right-handed. Another misperception about Billy the Kid is that his real name is William H. Bonney. The movie accurately notes that this is just one of many aliases he used. His real name, Henry McCarty. While on the topic of bathtubs, the following scene finds Billy bathing indoors while reciting a letter for Doc to write to President Hayes. Estevez was pulling a full-on Brando during this scene. That is, to make it appear as if he was coming up with the words on the spot, Estevez refused to learn his lines. Instead, the lines were written on large cue cards and held up by a crew member for Estevez to read while cameras roll. If you look closely, you can see Estevez's eyes scrolling side to side while he's reading those cards. Once the gang flees to Mexico, real-life lawman Pat Garrett arrives and warns Billy that Murphy's men are hot on the tail. The actor who plays Pat Garrett is Patrick Wayne, son of legendary Western star John Wayne. As mentioned before, the final gun battle between the Regulators and John Kinney's men is loaded with cool, easy-to-miss details. For instance, when McSween is finally blown away with a Gatling gun, actor Terry O'Quinn was not rigged with squib packs. This was done deliberately to avoid an X rating, given the amount of graphic bloodshed seen in the movie up until now. Speaking of squibs, the final shootout required Kiefer Sutherland to wear an entire vest rigged with them. Sutherland was meant to trigger the device himself by pressing a hidden button to detonate the explosives. However, when cameras were rolling, the device accidentally went off when Sutherland mounted his horse and left the actor covered in fake blood. Once the Regulators are trapped in the burning house, they put up their final stand by hiding Billy in the trunk and tossing him out of the house to mount an ambush. Believe it or not, at 1 hour, 39 minutes and 18 seconds into the movie, Tom Cruise appears in a disguised cameo as one of Murphy's henchmen, replete with a mustache, cowboy hat, pistol, and bandana. Having never been in a movie western before, Cruise happily agreed to briefly appear in the film to support his buddies. Young Guns also marked the first time Cruise was ever rigged with squibs. While swift and easy to miss, Cruise is the fourth man shot and killed by Charlie during the ferocious finale. As for Charlie Baldry, the movie ends with him going out in a blaze of glory by shooting John Kinney and dying in the process. In reality, that Charlie survived the Lincoln County War and died later in a gunfight in Stinking Springs, New Mexico. The event was depicted in Young Guns 2. Billy the Kid died 7 months later, and they were laid beside each other in the old Fort Sumner Cemetery. Similarly, the movie depicts the death of Dirty Steve in the brutal final shootout. This too was made up for dramatic purposes. In reality, Dirty Steve also survived the war and fled from New Mexico to Denver, Colorado. His ultimate fate, still unknown more than a century later. While not nearly as exciting as Tom Cruise's secret cameo, country western singer Randy Travis can also be seen in the film as the Gatling gun operator that takes McSween's life during the final shootout. Travis actually wrote an original song called Young Guns for the movie, but it was discarded and used for the sequel instead. Meanwhile, James Horner composed an original score for the movie that was also completely dismissed, after Chris Cain deemed it too Irish sounding and opted for more of a Western-influenced rock soundtrack instead. However, just as cool as finding Cruise's cameo in the film is spotting Emilio Estevez in disguise as one of Kinney's men in the finale. With his side of the gun battle already filmed, Estevez had nothing to do on set and just got bored. One last detail about the hyper-violent ending of Young Guns relates to slow-motion photography. Director Christopher Cain was adamant against shooting the final sequence in slow-mo, as he thought the trope was played out after Sam Peckinpah mastered it with The Wild Bunch. However, according to Phillips, quote, "This was before digital and they had to step print it at the end. They finally realized there's a reason you shoot it in slow motion. It's really dramatic and really cool. And so they went back and step printed it, which is why the last sequence gets a little grainy." Another amusing aside that can't go unmentioned is the fact that Warren G famously sampled Young Guns for his hit 1994 rap jam Regulators featuring Nate Dogg. Simasco later revealed that he's never heard the song before in his life and had no idea his speech was featured so prominently during its intro. Not for nothing, but one of the oddest things about Young Guns is the differing runtime of the movie according to various publications. For instance, IMDb lists the film as running 107 minutes. However, the movie's Wikipedia page claims a runtime of 103. The bizarre discrepancy was noticed by AFI, who reviewed a print of the film that lasted 106. In AFI's reporting, they noted that the original New York Times review of the film listed a runtime of 97, while a review from The Hollywood Reporter claimed a duration of 102 minutes. Whatever the cause of the mysterious runtime, the next time you watch the movie, try to track how long that sucker really lasts. Young Guns was released theatrically on August 12, 1988. Despite drawing mixed reviews from critics, the film opened at number 1 and went on to become a commercial hit, tripling its budget to earn a total of $45.6 million internationally. The movie was deemed successful enough to warrant a sequel, 1990's Young Guns 2. Many of the surviving characters from the first film reprised their roles, as did John Fusco. However, Chris Cain was replaced by director Jeff Murphy. While not quite on par with the original, Young Guns 2 cemented the franchise as a beloved touchstone in the 80s and 90s. Both films remained popular enough to justify the long-awaited Guns 3, Alias Billy the Kid, which is still currently in development. Emilio Estevez is poised to direct the film from a script he co-wrote with John Fusco. As of now, Lou Diamond Phillips is set to return as Jose Chavez y Chavez, and Estevez will reprise his role as Billy the Kid. Additionally, Christian Slater will also play Arkansas Dave once more following Young Guns 2. While details about the plot of Guns 3 are unknown, it may take longer to hit the screen than expected. As Phillips said, the film is in limbo right now. It was chugging along there for a minute, but then I think they got into the right situation. It's not dead, but it's not happening right now. And expanding further, Phillips stated that he already read the wonderful script by Estevez, and that it's similar in spirit to Top Gun Maverick in terms of legacy. Although Billy the Kid and Chavez appear to die at the end of Young Guns 2, Phillips contends that their corpses were never actually seen in the film, and so their return really isn't that far-fetched. And so that's what the happened to Young Guns. The film was clearly a lot of fun to make, and the final results show. Despite filming for 2 months in the frigid New Mexico winter and having a few on-set mishaps, injuries, and illnesses, kept the production afloat with his steady hand. And the youthful cast bonded so naturally while making the movie that many have since become lifelong friends. The movie might have been panned by some critics at the time, but because it struck such a resonant chord among the masses, the movie still remains incredibly popular 35 years later, and still holds up as one of the most entertaining Western action films of the past 4 decades. Hopefully, Guns 3 doesn't tarnish the legacy, but rather adds to the intriguing mythos of the Regulators when it eventually blasts its way to the public.